everyone, this is Maggie again, and in today's video I would like to share with you experiences that helped me to find an answer to a following question. Disclose or not to disclose the fact that I am totally blind in my job applications. Before I will move to the main part of this recording, I would like to emphasize that I am not an employment advisor and that I share with you my experiences as a totally blind person who is in full-time employment and who went through the process of looking for a job several times. I believe that we also need to remember that everyone is totally different, and this is why everyone has to find their own answer to this important question. At the same time, I really hope that my video will enable you to look at this problem from many different perspectives and that it will help you to make your own decision. I would like to start discussing today's topic by sharing my experiences from the very beginning of my professional career. So when I started the process of looking for my first job, I was really scared to disclose the fact that I am totally blind in my job applications. I was afraid that employers will assume that I may need a lot of additional help, with many different tasks, or that they will assume that they will have to spend a lot of money of equipment that I may need, or that they will assume that I may be unable to complete many of my duties, or basically that the quality of my work will be very poor because of my disability. And I was very worried that if I disclose the fact that I am blind, I may never even have a chance to attend an interview. So I thought that maybe if I don't disclose that I am blind in my job application, it will be easier for me to get an interview, and then during an interview, when I meet, people who conduct the interview, it will be easier for me to present all of my strengths, to present all of my experiences, my skills, my knowledge, and also that I will have more opportunity to answer all of the questions related to my disability, and that I will have a lot of opportunity to explain how I overcome all of the barriers resulting from my disability. But at the same time, I was feeling very, very uncomfortable about this option, and I felt really kind of not okay about not disclosing the fact that I am blind in my job application. You see, I value honesty and being open and transparency a lot. And I was really worried that it may be not the best way to start professional relationship with my future potential employer. And I was worried that, withholding this information or omitting this information may lead to many awkward situations or to many misunderstandings. And when I was thinking about this problem, I also tried to look at the situation from the perspective of an employer. And I was trying to imagine how I would feel and how I would respond to the situation. And I then decided that I would prefer to know this fact from the very beginning for many different reasons. And personally, I also thought that if I was in this situation and if I kind of found out that somebody didn't disclose their disability in a job application, then I would think possibly, oh gosh, is there anything else that they maybe are not disclosing? Is there anything else that I will find out later on about? And, remember, please, that this is my personal view here. I know that many of you may not agree with this, but this is what helped me to make my final decision. So this is why I'm sharing this. At this point, I also want to mention another important factor. So I understand, and this is like an obvious fact, that in many situations, our blindness is irrelevant. And if it's irrelevant, naturally, there is no need to disclose it, and there is no need to mention it. But I felt that this situation when I'm looking for a job is actually the situation where this information is relevant. And what I mean by this is that the fact that I am blind has an impact on how I function and work. And when I say that it has an impact, I don't mean that it necessarily has a negative impact. I basically do many things differently. So, for instance, I walk with the help of the guide dog, yes? Which, may have an impact on a situation at work. For instance, somebody may have a strong allergy to a dog. And if this is the case, it doesn't mean that I will not get a job, but it means that it has to be considered very early on, because, for instance, it may have an impact on sitting arrangements, or maybe I will not be on the same shift with this person or not in the same building with this person. So, that may be a helpful information that will enable us to find helpful solution. I also naturally, use computer with the help of the software, which is again relevant information. I access information in a different way. So I just basically felt that because it is relevant information, I will feel much better about this if I disclose this information from the very start. So after I made this decision, I also thought, okay, so what is the best way to kind of disclose it? So I decided not only to mention it, but also to create a brief paragraph in which I explain how I overcome difficulties resulting from my blindness. So I very briefly describe, list all of the funding, all of the additional funding that I am eligible for because of my blindness. Then I list equipment that enables me to perform my job, to complete my duties. And then I very briefly list the skills that help me to overcome the barriers resulting from my blindness. So for instance, I just write, because I am blind, I use the computer with the help of so-and-so software. Or because I am blind, I walk with the help of the guide dog and I am very efficient with using public transport. Or I write, as I am blind, I am eligible to this and that additional funding. So I then started sending my applications, and sadly, for the first few months, I didn't receive any invitations for interviews. And after a couple of months, I started thinking about this question again. And luckily, I discussed my dilemma with one of my friends who is a sighted person and who is working in a psychology field. And this friend gave me a very helpful insight that I will share with you today. So he said, Maggie, of course, discrimination is a massive problem. And of course, discrimination may be a reason why you haven't received yet any invitations for an interview. But remember that there are other possible explanations about which you also need to remember. So he said, it is also possible that you are not getting invitations for interviews because maybe you are not yet good enough candidate for these jobs. And he said, maybe you need to gain additional qualifications, or maybe you need to gain additional experience, or maybe simply your application is badly written, so maybe you have to rewrite it again, or maybe you have to learn how to write application. And then he said another thing, which initially was hard to receive, but now I totally agree with it. So what he said is, Maggie, please remember that if at any point of your life you choose to blame all of your failures and all of your difficulties on your disability and on discrimination, it may mean that you will stop developing as a person and you will stop developing professionally. So he said, yes, always keep it in mind that discrimination is a problem, but never blame all of your problems on discrimination, and always consider other options, and always try to think what you can do to improve and what you can do to be a better candidate and to be, more, to continue your personal development as well. And I totally got this point, and I followed his advice, and I attended a course where I learned how to write applications, how to write CVs properly, and how to write covering letters, and how to write personal statements. And I rewrote my application again, but I still kept information about my disability there. And also I went, I started volunteering again, and I went on additional courses. And after a couple of months, my situation changed, and I started receiving invitations for interviews, and I finally got a job. So when I started attending interviews, I gained additional experience, which confirmed to me that it was a right decision to disclose my disability in my job application. And now I will share with you these experiences. So in the first place, I realized that many interviews include tasks that require vision. So if I didn't disclose the fact that I can see in my job applications, yes, maybe I would get the interview, but I wouldn't be able to participate in it. And if I tried, I probably wouldn't perform well at all. So, thanks to the fact that I did disclose my disability, my employer, people who interviewed me, contacted me before an interview, and we had a chance to make reasonable adjustments, and I had a chance to participate in an interview and perform well. So here I will give few examples of this situation. So for instance, in few interviews, I was asked to discuss information that was presented in the form of the diagram, and if we didn't make reasonable adjustments, I wouldn't be able to discuss this information. So what happened is that the people who were interviewing me contacted me before an interview, and we agreed that I will arrive, few, like half an hour earlier before an interview, and I brought my own glue gun, and somebody created this diagram for me with the help of the glue gun, and I had this diagram in a tactile form, so I was fully able to discuss it. Another good example is that during several interviews, I was asked to participate in a role play, but the role play was based on a scenario that I had to read. So again, sighted people were reading this scenario during an interview, and I agreed with people who were interviewing me that again, I arrive, sometime, few minutes before an interview, and when I was in a waiting area, they emailed that scenario to me, and I was able to read it just before an interview, and I was able to participate in this task and perform well. And another example is that sometimes you may be asked to prepare a presentation that then you have to present in an interview. So it is important to agree whether you are bringing your own laptop with the software that enables you to use the laptop and then set up your presentation and then move your slides independently. Or maybe you will agree that you just bring the presentation, but they will help you to set it up and they will move your slides for you. So I hope that these examples make sense. And again, I just wanted to emphasize that in this case, disclosing my disability in my application helped me to perform well in the interview and gave us a chance to make reasonable adjustments. Now I will move to the next point, and I will again explain it using an example. So in some applications, one of the necessary requirements is having a driving license. And if I tick that I don't have a driving license, and if I don't explain the reason why, so I don't explain that I don't have it because I'm blind, and I don't explain how I may overcome this barrier, then my application may be rejected because basically they are unaware of the situation and they are unaware of how I can overcome this difficulty. And I actually realized this when on one occasion I was really hoping that I will get an interview because I felt that I perfectly meet the criteria, and sadly I didn't receive an invitation. So I knew that they normally don't give feedback about the application, but I said, well, I will try and call them because I'm really curious what can I improve. And I called them and they said, well, we didn't invite you because you don't have a driving license and this is necessary requirement. And I said, yeah, but I also put there that I can see, and I explained how I can overcome this difficulty. And they said, oh, we didn't notice this. And they said, of course, in that situation, we will consider your application and thank you for pointing this out. We just didn't notice this. And of course, this explains the whole situation, and I was offered an interview. And also we made a little of a joke of this, and we said, well, actually, it's lucky that you don't have a driving license in this situation. So remember about this as well, that sometimes it may explain different things if you disclose your disability and then explain how you can overcome various difficulties. Now, I also want to mention that after I got jobs, I also received a lot of positive feedback from people who interviewed me, and I realized that the fact that I was open and honest from the very beginning helped us to form very positive, trusting relationship, and that from the very beginning, me and my employer, we were working towards the same goal. So I wanted to have a good job and they wanted to have a good employee. And the fact that I explained everything in a lot of detail from the very start gave them reassurance that I am blind, but I am confident that I can overcome all of these difficulties. And it also reassured them that I have this all under control, that I know what to do, that I know all of the processes, and that I basically know what the steps are, and that I also take a lot of responsibility about making sure that everything goes well for me and for my employer. And they also said that the fact that I explained many things in the application helped them during the interview to focus, on my professional skills and on my professional experiences and on my professional knowledge, and that during the interview they didn't have to worry about the difficulties that may result from a disability, which also helped a lot, because during the interview they didn't have to think anymore about, okay, but what to do about this or that. So that that was really helpful to hear, and I hope that it also may help you to make your own decision. Another thing that I need to answer is that now more and more employers say in the job offers, the adverts, that they welcome applications from people with disabilities. So in these situations, it is definitely worth to disclose a disability. What is more, in some countries, there may be some schemes that support disabled people to employment. And for instance, in the UK, we have disability confidence scheme. And for instance, one of the rules of that scheme is that as long as you meet necessary criteria, necessary requirements of the job, you will be offered an interview. So in a way, it gives better chances to get an interview. And it is not legally binding, so the employer doesn't have legal obligation to do that, but often it helps. So now, towards the end of this video, I would like to share with you some practical tips that I find helpful, and I also hope that you will find helpful. So in the first place, I just wanted to clarify that when you complete a form created by the employer, so this is like a standard form, there may be a place where you're asked to tick whether you have disability or not, and there may be a place where you're asked to tick which disability you have. And also, I include all of the additional information, the one that I mentioned before about how I overcome the barriers, in the personal statement. And of course, this paragraph is a tiny, tiny proportion of the personal statement. Majority of the personal statement is all about how I meet, the essential criteria, how I meet the professional criteria. So, but still there is the room to place this little paragraph, okay? However, if you send a CV and you send a covering letter, you may include this additional information about your disability and about how you overcome difficulties resulting from this in a covering letter. And another tip that I would like to share with you is, I call it sending so-called test applications, and I will explain what I mean by this. So when I plan to apply for a new job, I start the process by writing an application and sending it to, and sending it out. And then I get an idea whether my application is good enough to get me an interview or whether I need to improve it further, or maybe whether I need to improve my qualifications and experiences further. And if I start getting invitations for interviews, then I just leave it as it is and I don't work on it anymore. But if I see that I don't receive invitations for interviews, then I try to rewrite it, try to improve it, the application, and I also try to get some feedback from my colleagues who again are in similar positions, and I try to further improve my qualifications, get additional experience, and so on and so forth. And I stop working on improvements when I start receiving invitations for interviews, okay? Then, another thing that I need to share is that it is necessary to check legal requirements regarding whether we need to or whether we don't have to disclose that we have disability in job applications. And this may depend on the country that we live in. So in some countries you may have legal requirement to disclose your disability, in some countries you don't. And also that may depend on your job role and on the position that you apply for. So read the application form carefully, read advert carefully, and check legal stance on it. And then another tip that I wanted to share is apply for as many jobs as you can. And for instance, I am pretty flexible where I live. So if I really want a particular job, I'm ready to move. So for instance, I apply all over the country, which gives me naturally the better chances of getting a job. And also I don't mind working evenings or sometimes Saturdays. So again, that gives me better chances of getting a job. So more the better. And the last thing that I want to mention today is the fact that in this video, I didn't mention at all the problem of positive discrimination. And I didn't cover it because it is a very complex and big topic. And maybe in the future, I will cover this in a separate recording. And today I just wanted to note that. So I want to wish you all the best with your applications and with job hunting. If you find this video helpful, please do subscribe to my channel. I am planning more videos with useful tips. And also, if you think that somebody else may benefit from that recording, please share it with them. And thank you for watching today, and I will see you soon in my next recording. Bye bye!